Josh is locked up till 2033. Joseph's case is just getting started. The show's been gone for over a decade, so where does this whole Duggar story actually go from here? Because that's the question I keep getting in the comments. Jenny, is this thing ever going to end? Jenny, what happens next? And honestly, I've been thinking about it a lot. Today I want to do something a little different. I'm not unpacking another scandal. I'm not breaking down another courtroom moment minute by minute. I want to look forward to it. 5 years out, maybe 10. Where does this story go? What does it become? And what does it leave behind? Stick with me. Because once you see the trajectory clearly, the whole thing starts to make a lot more sense. Now, before I get into it, let me be upfront about what I'm doing here, because I think it matters. I'm not making things up. I'm not pretending I have a crystal ball. What I am doing is reading the patterns. Legally, the calendar tells us what's coming. Culturally, you can already see where things are shifting. And for the family itself, the cracks that opened up years ago aren't closing. They're getting wider. So this isn't a prediction in the wild guess sense. It's more like, if you watch a river long enough, you start to see where it bends next. That's the kind of forecast I'm doing. Reading the bend. Let's start with the simplest piece, because it's the most concrete. The legal thread. This is the backbone of the next year or two of the Duggar story, whether anyone wants it to be or not. Josh Duggar is in federal prison. He was sentenced in 2022 to 12.5 years on With the federal system, there's no parole the way most people picture it. He serves around 85% of his sentence with good behavior, and that puts his earliest release somewhere around 2032 into 2033. So when you hear me say Josh is locked up till 2033, I mean it pretty literally. He is not coming home this year. He is not coming home next year. The court has already said where he is and when he gets out. And absent some appeal nobody's expecting to land, that is the timeline. So that piece is settled. He is not the active part of this story anymore. He is the past, the reminder. The sentence is already being served. Joseph is the active part now, and his case is just beginning. He was arrested in March of this year, charged in Florida with victim under 12 behavior. The allegations stem from a 2020 family vacation in Panama City Beach. The accuser was 9 years old at the time, and according to the affidavit, she came forward years later. Joseph has pleaded not guilty. I want to say that part clearly because it matters. He has pleaded not guilty. He is presumed innocent until a court says otherwise. He is, as of right now, awaiting trial. He posted a $600,000 bond. He is back in Arkansas, and he has a no-contact order in place regarding the accuser and unsupervised contact with minors. His wife Kendra is also dealing with separate misdemeanor charges in Arkansas tied to allegations involving their own children. Different case, different jurisdiction, both pending. So what happens next legally? You are going to see motions. You are going to see hearings. You are going to see attorneys filing to modify bond conditions, to challenge evidence, to delay or accelerate. You are going to see leaks, statements, walkbacks. This is what early-stage criminal cases look like. And depending on whether Joseph and his team push for trial or pursue a plea, the next 12 to 18 months could either be a quiet grind of paperwork or one of the most covered courtroom stories of the year. My honest read? Given the family's pattern with public scandal, given the seriousness of the alleged admissions referenced in the affidavits, given how high-profile the name is, I would expect this to drag. High-profile defendants almost always drag. So mentally, prepare yourself. This is not ending in 2026. This is going to be a 2027 story, possibly a 2028 story. The court calendar is the backbone of the next chapter, full stop. Okay, that is the legal piece. Now let me turn to something a lot more delicate, and please listen carefully to how I frame this. The next generation. Here is what I mean. There is a wave happening with the adult Duggar children, and it is not slowing down. Jill Duggar Dillard wrote her memoir. She did the documentary. She has spoken in detail about what she experienced growing up inside that family system. Jinger Vuolo has written about leaving the theology she was raised in. Amy Duggar King, technically a cousin but raised close, has been one of the loudest voices for years now. And there are others, quieter ones, who have started giving small interviews, dropping social media posts, hinting at more to come. My honest read is, we are going to see a lot more of this over the next 5 years. More memoirs, more podcast appearances, more long-form interviews, possibly more documentary participation. These are adults making their own choices, telling their own stories on their own timelines. And I want to be very clear, because I think it matters. I am talking about adults speaking. I am not talking about children. I am not interested in anything involving the kids in that family. Those are minors. They get to grow up. That is not the story. But the adults, they have the right to tell what happened to them. And the longer the family stays in the headlines for the wrong reasons, the more space those voices get. That is just how it works. When the only people speaking publicly about the Duggar name for a decade were Jim Bob and Michelle on TLC, the narrative was one thing. Now that other voices have stepped forward, the story has fundamentally changed. And I do not see that reversing. I see it accelerating. Because once one sibling tells their story and survives the family backlash, the next one finds it a little easier. Then the next one. That is the pattern in every family system like this, and the Duggars are not the exception. Now let's talk about the media, because this is the question I get asked the most. Is this an ongoing coverage franchise, or does this eventually close as a story? My honest answer is, in 5 years, the Duggar name is still going to be a coverage franchise. I do not love that as a sentence, but I think it is the truth, and here is why. There are 19 children. 19. Each one is starting a family, making choices, building a life. Some are staying inside the original belief system. Some are walking away from it. Some are publicly aligned with their parents. Some are estranged. Every one of those storylines is its own ongoing piece of content. You do not need a TV show for this story to keep going. The internet has already made it a permanent ecosystem. There are podcasts dedicated to it. There are subreddits with hundreds of thousands of members. There are YouTube channels, this one included, that cover it regularly. That entire infrastructure does not just disappear. And then there is the real possibility of another documentary. The first big one performed extremely well. It generated cultural conversation. It brought in viewers who had never watched the show, and it put a frame around the family that the family itself could not control. With Joseph's case in the news, with more of the adult children speaking, with Josh still serving his sentence, I would be very surprised if there is not another documentary in development right now. Streamers love this kind of story. They get attention, they get awards, they get subscribers. So expect that. Not certain, but expect it. Hold up, though, because here's the bigger cultural shift this is all part of, and I think this is the part most people miss. The era of wholesome reality television is over. Genuinely over. Audiences have completely soured on it. Think about how many of those shows we grew up watching. The Family series, the Homestead series, the Squeaky Clean Lifestyle series. The ones that pitched themselves as proof that some families had life figured out. How many of them turned out to have something rotten in the center? The Duggars are not the only ones. They are not even close to the only ones. Audiences caught on. The same viewers who once loved seeing big, happy families on TLC are now suspicious of those families on principle. And that suspicion is earned. Because when a family signs up to broadcast their lives as proof of how perfect their values are, you have to ask why they need to broadcast that. Real life is not a marketing campaign, and reality TV taught a whole generation of viewers to read between the smile lines, to notice the kid who never speaks, to notice who is not in the family photo this season, to wonder what is being edited out. That cultural shift outlasts the Duggar story specifically. We are not going back to wholesome reality TV the way it was in the 2010 seconds. That genre is dead. What replaces it is what we are seeing now, the pulled-back curtain, the post-show reckoning, the adult kids speaking. That is the new genre, and the Duggars are going to be one of the case studies that built it. The thing future media students get assigned to read about when they want to understand how reality television lost its trust with the audience. Which brings me to the accountability piece. And I want to handle this part with care, because it is the most important one. The Duggar story, and stories like it, have changed the conversation around abuse in high-control religious communities. That sentence is doing a lot of work, so let me unpack it. For a long time, communities that operated with strict patriarchal authority, strict purity culture, strict isolation from outside accountability, were not part of the mainstream conversation about abuse. They were treated as private, as for culture, as nobody else's business. The Duggar coverage helped change that. Not by itself. Survivors and journalists and advocates did the heavy lifting. But because the Duggars were public, because their belief system was visible on cable television in millions of homes, the conversation became national. People who would never have looked at Quiverful or the broader homeschool patriarchy world suddenly knew the terms. They knew what to look for. They knew what questions to ask their own families, their own churches, their own communities. And that ripple is bigger than one family. Other communities are now being talked about. Other survivors are speaking. Other patterns are being recognized. The Duggars did not cause that, but the visibility of the Duggar story sped it up. And honestly, that might end up being the most important legacy of the whole thing. Not the show, not the scandals. The way it forced a national conversation that should have been happening decades earlier. Now, I have to be honest about something else, because if I do not, I am doing the same thing the worst of the coverage does. There is a real risk in all of this, and I want to name it. The risk is that coverage curdles, that as real news slows down, content creators, including channels exactly like this one, start manufacturing significance where there is not any. Every social media post becomes a bombshell. Every old photograph becomes breaking news. Every minor family member becomes a target. And at some point, that crosses a line. From documenting a story into exploiting it. From accountability journalism into rubbernecking. And the audience can tell. They can absolutely tell. So I want to say, on this channel, my line is this. We cover what is actually happening. We cover the legal cases as they move. We cover the adults who choose to speak. We cover the cultural conversation. We do not speculate about minors. We do not manufacture drama. We do not dig into people who never asked to be public figures and have not made themselves part of the story. There are 19 kids in that family. Some of them, the adult ones, have stepped forward. Some have stayed quiet. The ones who stayed quiet get to stay quiet. That is not me being soft. That is me being responsible. Because the whole point of covering a story like this is to make the world a little more honest. And you cannot do that by becoming the thing you are criticizing. All right, let me land this honestly. Nobody can predict every twist in this story. I cannot tell you exactly how Joseph's trial ends. I cannot tell you which sibling writes the next book. I cannot tell you what new piece of information surfaces in the next year that changes everything. What I can tell you is the through line. And the through line is this. The shiny facade era is over. The look at our perfect family era is over. The carefully managed television image is gone, and it is not coming back. What replaces it is what we are watching unfold in real time. The legal cases, the adults telling their own stories, the cultural reckoning with the kind of community the family came from, the slow, uncomfortable, public process of all the truth the show was designed to hide, finally coming out anyway. That is the real story, and it is not going to be wrapped up by next Christmas. It is not going to have a tidy ending. Real stories rarely do. But the direction is clear, toward truth, toward accountability, toward letting the people who were silenced have the microphone instead of the people who silenced them. That is the trajectory. 5 years from now, 10 years from now. That is what this becomes. So what is your prediction? Where do you think this story goes from here? Drop it in the comments. I am serious. I want to read them. And I am going to set a calendar reminder, 1 year from today, to come back to this video and see whose call was held up. Mine or yours? So leave your prediction below, hit subscribe if you want to be here when I revisit this in a year, and I will see you in the next one.